Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. My name is Jamira Burley, and as always, I am here with my brilliant co-host, Brea Baker. And it's Women's History Month, which means we get to keep celebrating the month like we did last year, because there's so much to celebrate despite all of the things happening around us.
Yes. I mean, in this current climate, we need to celebrate, we need to protect, because women, we need to protect women, we need to educate about women, we need to honor women 365 days a year as a rebuttal to this current administration's rollbacks and BS. And March gives us just an extra little bit of encouragement on doing just that, right? So, we need it more than ever. Today's episode will be leaning all the way in.
As it should, right? It's also Winter Olympic season over here. So we figured that it would be even better time to dig both into the contributions of women in this episode, but also talk about sportsmanship, feminism at large, as we continue to defy the erasure of women's contribution throughout history.
Yeah. And I know that I feel like most of us are Summer Olympics fans, but the Winter Olympics gave us
There's
lots
some good
of
ones.
good women power energy. So yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm being influenced.
You're not a bobsled player enthusiast? What?
Child, bring me track. Okay, bring me basketball. Bring
I'll take
me,
swimming, all of that.
yeah, all
Tennis,
that.
yep, agreed.
Yeah. But let's get into some headlines because I like yours this week. I feel like you always have like the negative ones, but this week you have some really good ones.
Well, I am a Virgo through and through. And my first topic or first headline of the day is, as you all might have seen, how in honor of Women's History Month, let me be very clear. I do not support all women, because some women are actually dumb and some women are actually harmful to the collective community of women. This woman
Period.
specifically, Kristi Noem, who recently lost her job on live TV, didn't even realize that she was fired until she was asked by a reporter. But she would no longer be heading the Department of Homeland Security. She was removed from office by Donald Trump. Her role, I think, she will either be moved into another role, or her duties will reduce significantly. And her replacement is currently in the process of being confirmed by Senate, and he's even more unqualified than she is. So fun times ahead for us to continue to fight back against the tyranny that is the Trump administration, as they continue to try to separate children, families apart, and continue to try to deport members of our community who has made America what it is today. So yeah, do not support all women, because some women are in fact dumb.
Some women are really dumb for real. Yeah, I'm so glad to be kicking off the month in that way, because I think that that's important to say is like, on a serious note, these months are not platitudes to just like pink wash everything. We're not going to girl boss everything. Like some of you are actually, causing harm. Some people are actually like working in favor of patriarchy and white supremacy, regardless of the color of their skin and the gender. No, sometimes the identity is not going to be a mask for all the time. Identity is not going to be a mask for your real politics. So
especially when she uses $220 million American dollars to do an ad campaign to talk about deporting American citizens, individuals who are part of the fabric of America, as people are debating whether or not to keep their lights or pay for groceries. And the senator who potentially will be replacing her is Senator Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma. He's a Republican, and he formerly was I believe he was a plumber.
Okay.
Love plumbers. Plumbers have a role within society, but he has never played a role in law enforcement. He does not have a legal background. He has never worked for the federal government. So yeah, when I say that he is even less qualified than Kristi Noem, because at
I was
least
just about to say I was waiting for some like this makes sense. What?
It all makes sense because they're all stupid. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. Oh, the ghetto. Well, listen, at least that she's out. And I need these people to be reminded that the administration that they commit crimes for are not loyal to them.
Absolutely not.
And so it's just such a sinking ship to strap yourself to. But speaking of sinking ships, fuck the BAFTAs, the award show where Black people were called the N word several times. And the excuse for that was Tourette's. And there's been such an ongoing conversation on social media about whether it is ableist to critique what happened in that moment. Number one, I think there's a lot of different people who need to be held accountable, and we've had that conversation many, many times. But
yeah,
for the point of today's episode and this headline, the BAFTAs chose to edit out a lot of stuff. They edited out many, many sentences about Congo, Sudan, and Palestine. They edited out hours of filler content, and they did not edit out two Black men, two nominated Black men having that word lobbed at them. And so the fact that they chose to amplify that word speaks volumes about values and what was worth their time to cut. And I'm just so grateful that in the aftermath, they have just continued to win and win and win. And it has kind of drowned that out from the NAACP Image Awards to the SAG-AFTRA Actor Awards. And now the Oscars are coming up around the corner. I just hope that the Sinners cast continues to just have like this love shown on them, because it has been just a reminder of why the screenplay was written in the first place. Of what we are up against.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like Tourette's is definitely a part of why it happened. That's no one's debating that. But to assume that there is no harm for there to be an apology for, to assume that Black people should just take abuse of every kind, because that's what it is. I mean, why someone did it doesn't negate the fact that it was done, that harm was committed. It was done on
intention.
The intention does not negate the harm that was committed.
Yeah.
Right. And the fact that this happened on a global stage where they had all of the mechanisms to be able to remove that from the airing tells me they don't care about Black lives, right? They don't care about the harm that Black people experience, because it's not just those two men that was on that stage. It was every Black person who was watching that show, now feeling like that award ceremony does not respect them, does not care for them enough to be like, we're not going to cause harm. And you could just see the responses on their faces as they're hearing themselves being called such a derogative word. It's extremely disappointing. And people online pretending like they can't understand the nuance of the conversation and that Black people are just making this bigger than what it is, tells me they do not live in a reality. Because had he said things about the Jews, had he said things about transgender folks or LGBTQ, had he said things about MAGA, right? Because we saw them remove statements about Palestine from the airing. We saw them remove statements about other impacted communities. And it's like, when do Black people also get the chance to be protected just as much? And so, yeah, I was highly disappointed, but not surprised. I mean, because this is, anti-Blackness is a global phenomenon that we're all trying to grapple with every single day. And I think what this has shown is because the UK loves to say that, it's more about class over there versus racism. And I think this is a clear example that y'all have a lot of internalized racism that you need to grapple with, because the whole world just watched it unfold.
They got their own work to do.
Yeah, they do. And other bad news here in America, if the shortage of medical staff was not staggering and scary enough in recent months, we have to now address the fact that hundreds of American nurses are now choosing Canada over the United States. So they might have been born in America, but they're going to be working in Canada. And they're leaving for a host of reasons, because of the deep cuts to public health, insurance, and medical research, because of women, because of nurses not being appreciated and celebrated within the field, particularly now being labeled the reclassification of nursing degrees as non-professional degrees, which is astronomically asinine. Like, these people are ridiculous. And the fact that the British Columbia, also, in addition to Canada, are launching these national and global campaigns to recruit nurses and doctors from the United States, because they recognize that it's now marketable, right? Like, these folks want to leave, and they're offering them an opportunity to go to a place where they're going to be celebrated and uplifted and paid well. And I think that's something we should all be very nervous about, because the US health system is already underemployed and understaffed. So what a time to get sick, right? What a time. God forbid we have another COVID.
God forbid. I mean, and stuff has been floating around, y'all. Like, I know people want to be like, why are we still masking? People are still sneezing. People are still coughing. Sickness is still going around. And not enough people got vaccinated for us to have warded off the variants. So, not for nothing.
Now, what you're going to do now with, and what are we going to do now with 270,000 nurses? Like, short 270,000 nurses. Like, that's a huge number.
No, that's insane. That's insane number. That's what it is. Yeah. Too much going on. Well, child, my little last update, my only good news is that the U.S. women's hockey team declined Trump's invitation to attend the State of the Union with him. And I was just like, good on you. I mean, I know that, number one, we're about to have a really good conversation about women in sports. So I'm glad that I could kind of end on this note. And so just their performance in general has been incredible, and bravo to the team. But I love to see them stand on business and the politics. And I not for nothing, but I think that the men could have done a little bit more. I think the women just consistently show out around mental health, around around gender justice, around trans women in sports, and not using their name again. Like, I just think that there have been so many great moments. And so this women's hockey team refusing to be put on that pedestal, especially a team including Layla Edwards, first Black woman to medal for women's hockey. I mean, it was just like, yes, hell yes, please and thank you. Do not align yourself with this administration, and let's continue to keep some sort of separation of the culture from this like fascist regime.
Yeah, and I think what we have to remember too is that this invitation was an afterthought. They saw the backlash of how America responded to Trump's jokes to the U.S. male hockey team, despite the fact that the women's hockey team winning since the 1980s, right? And the men, this is the first time they've won in decades. So the irony is not lost on me, the fact that these are women who are highly skilled individuals being invited as an afterthought because the Trump realized that his joke was distasteful. And America realized it's distasteful. And so, yeah, to your point, I appreciate them not allowing themselves to be used as political tools at a time in which that very administration is actually making it harder for women like them to exist and be able to move freely through society and exercise their rights. Why allow yourself to be used as a political football by an administration that wants you to go back into the kitchen and to allow only men to be able to access the same rights and privileges women have been accessing for the last 50 years. So yeah, I was excited to see that. And also, like, the fact that the men's hockey team went and they got just cold McDonald's is just absolutely so Trump.
Stay out this White House.
You will suffer when you disrespect women. You will suffer. So let this be a notice to all men to get it together. Get it together, because we're not
wisely. Choose wisely.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're going to take a quick break. You're watching The Other Side of Change only on the Black Star Network, and when we come back, we're going to dive deeper into the challenges women are facing, not just in sports, but also in having our history erased by the very people who have claimed that they want to protect us. So we'll be right back.
I'm Brittany Noble, Midwest-born, HBCU educated with experience in newsrooms across the country. Well, I've teamed up with Roland Martin to bring to you The Breakdown. This isn't just news. It's our stories, our voice, our community. Join me for The Breakdown, Monday through Friday at midday, only on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. For those who are just tuning in, welcome and happy Women's History Month. We are in the midst of feminism, which means generations of women are demanding autonomy, opportunity, and safety from gender-based violence. Yeah. This March, we are doubling down on that and inviting you to consider whether you're doing everything you can to leave the world better for the girls, women, and femmes in your community.
Yeah. And progress never happens coincidentally. It always takes coordinated effort and resistance. That's something we know intimately as Black women because we bear the burden of addressing both racism and sexism. But this shouldn't just fall on us. People of all genders, people of all races, people of all socioeconomic backgrounds need to make this a non-negotiable for the future that we're building towards. So that means we want to see Black men in this fight. That means we want to see women of all racial backgrounds in this fight. That means we want to see people of all genders in this fight. That means people of privilege, people without, need to say that patriarchy has no place.
Agreed. And like we did for Black History Month, right? It's not enough to just talk about the bad things, but we need to start with, let's celebrate all that we have accomplished despite the barriers placed in front of us by institutions like the Trump administration, right? That has been happening for decades. Mm-hmm. So we want to begin with a celebration, and we know there's so much anger and frustration, but first let's pay homage to the work that has been done by so many women and men throughout history that has led us to this moment where women have more power and access than we ever have before.
Yeah, period. For those who were not locked in on the Winter Olympics, we are just going to catch you up to speed because even beyond U.S. women's hockey, you might not have realized that U.S. women athletes won more gold medals and more medals overall than U.S. men, with the final tally of 6 gold medals and 17 medals overall that the American women brought in.
Because we be doing it. And this is not the first time this has happened. In fact, this is the third consecutive Winter Games where women athletes have come out on top. The same is true for Summer Olympics, in which U.S. women have won more gold and more medals than U.S. men for the past 4 consecutive Summer Games. Okay, so we're not just pretending to show up in cute outfits. We also have the skills necessary enables for us to win. And the U.S. women hockey team in particularly, they've medaled every single Winter Olympics since women hockey was first played in 1998. Let me say that again. The U.S. women's hockey team in particular, they have medaled every single Winter Olympics since women hockey was first played at the Olympics in 1998.
That is bonkers. That is crazy. And listen, I'm not going to pretend that I am like a huge hockey fan, but I'm very surprised that this is not bigger
so
news.
Good. No, okay, we got to go to a game.
I want to get into it. I think I'm just also just like,
no, I promise you, we have to go. We have to sit close to the glass, and it's so good. It's so good. I mean, I'm from Philly. I'm a Flyers fan through and through. Okay. It's really good. You got to also, that's what
listen, you might convince me. You might convince me. Because I do think that it's dope and like it's a very physical game, obviously, and they just keep coming out on top. I'm very surprised it's not bigger news, especially at a time when, attacks on women and girls are increasing. You'd think that the party that claims to be protecting women and girls would celebrate these sort of victories as more than just symbolic and, they're not superficial. But reality, it just proves that exactly where the priorities are, because Republicans are too busy vilifying trans people in sports and certainly minimizing the sorts of policies that actually helped women thrive and get to these places like Title IX. So.
Agreed. And to your point, like this is a prime example that they don't really care about us, right? We're used as a political football in a way. Right. And I think that's why the conversation without a Title IX, which bars sex-based discrimination in education programs and activities included in athletes, for athletes. It was Title IX that created space for greater resources and infrastructure around women's sports, as tennis pioneer and icon Billie Jean King told USA Today. These opportunities are the future, are why it is important we continue to protect legislation and the intent behind Title IX for all, because we cannot protect women and girls without making sure that the mechanisms to do so are enshrined within not only policy, but also practice and culture.
Yeah. And I love that Billie Jean King is still out here talking about those very, very things. It was decades ago that she changed the game for,
She's about that life.
No, she's really about that life. Listen, the Billie Jean Kings, the Jane Fondas, some of these white women is really out here doing what they talking about for real. But no, for real, I think it shows like how much she's able to achieve in her lifetime, but also that, some of her first wins that she made around gender equality and women's sports were achieved decades ago. And there's still so much that we're fighting for around the same thing. And it just is so frustrating to see, because I just feel like women have proved time and time again what we are capable of. And I hate to even like feed into the narrative, because it reminds me of what we sometimes feel pushed to do around Black excellence, with this idea of, it's like, let's prove our value, let's prove our worth. And it's like, we know that the opposition knows that we're valuable. That's why they're keeping us out, because they don't want to compete. But women have accomplished so much, especially when patriarchy is out of the way and not inhibiting us. We are Olympians, we are lawyers, we are judges, we are astronauts, we are educators, we are medical professionals, creatives, scientists. We do so much, we invent so much. It just feels silly to even reiterate this, but we live in a country whose leaders hypersexualize or infantilize us. And I mean, not even all of us, but some of us get hypersexualized and infantilized. Some of us get vilified and scapegoated, but their lives will never be our truths. And that is what I think is most important to remember in months like this, is that we define ourselves and we set the tone for how others define us as well. And we continue to do that, even when they are trying to use their whiteout and change history.
Yeah. In broad daylight, right? Because without women, we might not have discovered the science behind DNA. We might not have beat the race of world in sending a man to the moon. We might not have created car heaters, fire escape, lift ramps, the electric refrigerator, and so much more were created with women and in collaboration with women. And it just goes to show you that men are just not as confident and as sure of themselves as they claim to be. Because if you were as, manly and masculine and as successful as you pretend to be to the rest of the world, it wouldn't matter what women are doing around you. You would be able to sit with that, celebrate that, uplift that, which is why whenever I see a man who's like in relationship with an equally yoked woman, and it doesn't seem like they're in competition with each other, that they truly just have like a mutual respect and they celebrate each other, I'm all here for it.
Yeah. Because that's what, it takes you being sure of yourself, that my femininity is not a threat to your masculinity, that my success is not a threat to your success, that we can all thrive side by side. And if I feel like I can only compete with you out of the picture, I already feel small. It's not that you're doing anything to make me feel small. I've already done it to myself. But yeah, just continuing on and on and on. It also feels like kind of like shooting yourself in the foot to erase women's contributions, because there's so many successes and rights that men benefit from that would not exist without women. If it weren't for women, we wouldn't have most social justice wins, because women have been the hidden backbones behind them all. That goes for the civil rights movement, the American Indian movement, the farm workers movement, French Chicanos, immigration reform, gun violence prevention, and so many more. Women activists often do the grueling behind the scenes work without the appreciation or acknowledgement or consideration. But we just do it because, for the love of it, like just plain and simple.
Because it's the right thing to do. And I think that's what we need to get back to more often than not, is like, how do we get back to doing the right thing? Because it helps each and every one of us and not just a few chosen few. So let's talk about the erasure of women's history, because a lot of the facts we share today are not widely known. Women contributions and achievements have been made footnotes in the stories we tell about men. And we want to make sure that we grapple with the fact that this is bullshit, to be honest. And it isn't about just women asking for the main stage in athletic arenas. It also is about keeping women and families and communities afloat from our labor, right? Without women, we would not have so many families being able to survive. And our labor is considered invisible, unpaid, and minimized oftentimes by the very men and families that we're protecting.
Yeah. That's the worst part. That's the worst part. And I think that's where we want to see more solidarity, more people acknowledging that that women are so vital and that keep this world going, and not just from a selfish place, but for damn sure, like, how can I let someone that I love and cherish and benefit from be disrespected, right? So, I mean, but that's how American capitalism and patriarchy works. If women were properly celebrated and compensated, it would cut into profits and it would lead to more shared power, which is something that wealthy men hate when they're trying to hoard power and hoard resources. So we have to make all of these connections really, really explicit. And I'm excited for, the continued conversation we're going to have around that.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? The only people who truly benefit from the censorship, the erasure, the limiting women's ability to have autonomy are really just white male men. They are the vast majority of people who are benefiting from it. And so the rest of us need to really band together and disrupt this erasure and continue to think about not only how we celebrate and uplift women when we can, but also thank women every chance we get, encourage others to see women, to honor women, and not just in moments when it's comfortable, but also when it's uncomfortable, when it actually infringes on our individual's ability to show up as we would normally do. We have to ensure that we are protecting them at all costs.
And we're going to talk all
not
about
just the
how
women
to
that
do.
you find attractive. Let me just say that. Not just the women you find attractive, not just the women who
are
like you, but all
There's
women.
Too many good guys who think that being nice to women who they want to be with romantically is enough to mean that they're not patriarchal. But child, anyway, that's some tea for another day. But we have a really dope guest coming up, Dr. Malaika Tubbs, 2 times New York Times bestselling author and brilliant researcher, who's going to help us better understand the work that we still have to do to champion women, again, beyond the just niceties and the who run the world girls. Like, I love me some Beyonce, and like, what does it mean to actually create space for women to take up our space in the world? So you're watching The Other Side of Change, and that's only on the Black Star Network. And stay with us.
A decade of love, joy, and power. Black Voters Matter is 10 years old, and we are just getting started. This is love with a purpose. This is Black joy in motion. This is unstoppable power. Across campuses, neighborhoods, and back roads, let's go! We show up not just to vote, but to be seen, to be heard, to belong. We ride together. We organize together. We remind each other that our voices matter, because they always have. Black Voters Matter is about more than ballots. It's about housing and healthcare, clean water and living wages, education, reproductive freedom, and dignity. It's about turning pain into action, turning belief into movement, turning community into power. We don't wait to be invited. We bring the energy. We bring the love. We bring the people. Because when Black communities come together, we don't just survive, we thrive. This is how change happens. This is how history moves. We organize, we build, we win.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. As you've been listening to so far, we have been discussing Women's History Month and all of the issues impacting women today. We're super excited for our next guest. Joining us is Dr. Anna Malaika Tubbs, who is a 2 times New York Times bestselling author, who holds a PhD in sociology, a master's in multidisciplinary gender studies from the University of Cambridge, and a bachelor's in medical anthropology from Stanford University. Anna has published articles on topics ranging from celebrating womanhood to addressing the forced sterilization of Black women, as well as the importance of feminism, intersectionality, and inclusivity. Her writing has been featured in New York Times, in Time Magazine, CNN, Motherly Newsweek, as well as The Guardian, and more. I'm super excited to have her on the show to talk to us about the difficulties in the lives of women and how they're still faced and forced to experience their lives through patriarchy here in America and around the world. Join me in welcoming Dr. Anna to the show. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No, this is such a pleasure. I think since your last book came out, we've been trying to think about like when to bring you on, and it's always an honor to talk to you. So thanks for making time.
I feel the same way. I'm honored. Love you both. Thanks for having me.
And could not be a better time. I mean, obviously Women's History Month and the subjects that you write about, but you yourself are an incredible, brilliant woman who's doing so many important things. But you've written 2 incredible books, The Three Mothers and Erased. And I know that you've shared this story before, but just for our listeners, can you tell us more about those books and the story that you're telling through them?
Absolutely. So my first book baby, came out 5 years ago, 2021. It's about the mothers of MLK Jr., Malcolm X, and James Baldwin, Alberta King, Louise Little, and Bertus Baldwin. And the way I summarize the book is that all 3 of these women did what their sons later became famous for long before their sons were even a thought in their mind. They were all activists in their own right, and their sons really just followed in their footsteps. And my book was the first one to tell the world that part of the story, even though the sons have been so studied and so many books have been written about them, and we revere them as we should, we were really missing a really big part of the puzzle of their lives. And even in our honoring of them, we didn't fully understand the story when we were missing the moms. So that's my first book. And my second book came out just last year, 2025. It's about patriarchy in the United States. It's called Erased: What American Patriarchy Has Hidden from Us. And it's an extension of The Three Mothers. When people read The Three Mothers, they feel so shocked that these women were erased. And I'm really explaining in this new book that that is just one symptom of many of a system that tries to deny the contributions of women, but especially women of color, but even more so that this system in the US is affecting all of us, regardless of gender, regardless of race, regardless of class. We are trapped by a design that our founding fathers made for all of us when they signed the Declaration of Independence around 250 years ago. And so I'm really just turning our attention to that original system and asking all of us to come together to see if we can build something better in our nation.
Oh my God, that's so on point. And I think what's so interesting is I remember my mentor telling me this 20 years ago that like behind every powerful man is an even powerful woman. And it's a reminder that most men could not be who they are without the backing and the support and the love and nurturing and the ideas oftentimes of the women in their lives. Some of the greatest men throughout history were supported by and leveraged the talents of women. You know what I appreciate mostly about your writing, Anna, is like I think what you draw a correlation to is that this is not by happenstance, right? This is a very deliberate attack on women that is enshrined in almost every aspect of our society deliberately. So I'm curious, in this moment right now where we see the history of Black and women's stories being erased from history, women are being removed from positions of power. How do you think that erasure plays out right now, the importance of how it's being used as a weapon, but more importantly, how it's going to impact generations to come?
Yeah, I think that's really important to constantly remind ourselves that none of this is a mistake. None of this is an accident. It's all by design. Mm-hmm. And I think we've heard that said before, right? Like the system isn't broken. It's working the way it was designed to. But I think we haven't really analyzed what exactly the system is in the United States. I think we speak about it pretty vaguely sometimes. And so it kind of goes over people's heads. So in Erased, I'm getting very clear on what it is the founding fathers designed and how it's still impacting us this many years later. So they wanted to build a republic of men. And when they won the Revolutionary War, they were the underdogs. Nobody was expecting this to happen. But they actually were very afraid that they were going to lose power in the nation that they had just fought to win, because there were other people that they were oppressing who might have their own revolutions, people who were enslaved, women in their lives. And so with this fear and insecurity, they established the system of the United States and write the Constitution, where they enshrine power in the hands of men like them. And this is very intentional. They would not be apologetic for it. They would say, yes, that's exactly what we were trying to do. They write it in letters. We're building a republic of men. And so they say that men get to vote. Men get to own land. They tell the women in their lives through letters, you are not to participate politically. The only thing you're supposed to do is reproduce the power of men through children. You have no power in your own right. And so they set up this binary in the United States that is obviously flawed, obviously limited, obviously leaving out people who do not fit this gender binary, but they're also leaving out people who are enslaved. They're also leaving out immigrants from that point forward. They're also leaving out indigenous communities, and that is by design. They do not consider these groups to be allowed into who they're recognizing as human in the United States. So they set up this system where we're all fighting for our right to be gendered in this problematic gender binary, but also that it's always tied to whiteness. And so everybody else is told, even though you're not recognized in the system, you have the chance to be recognized if you assimilate to these two groups and if you play your part in protecting this original social order. And so really, I feel like everything in American history can be brought back to this design, where you have a group of people who want to protect that original social order. And then you have a group of people who say, that is not enough for us. That is not inclusive of all of us. That is not true democracy. And we're building towards a true democracy. And so you've seen this tug of war back and forth throughout American history between these two groups. And the one that's really trying to perfect what it actually would be like to live in a democracy where all of us are included, all of our voices are heard. And so when it comes to women's rights in particular, and of course, obviously there's so many layers to that depending on other parts of our demographic information, but we've seen that we have, of course, gained the right to vote first for white women. And then we see in the civil rights movement, we gained the right to vote for all people. And so we're hearing now this need to pull back on any of those moments where we've had progress or we've had wins. So we're just seeing the continuation of the tug of war. And so this current moment where we have President Trump reelected, it's not that he's inventing anything new. None of his strategies are new. He's recycling old strategies of a group of people who want to return to the original social order. And so, of course, there's going to be a very clear focus on regressing in terms of the rights of women, women of color in particular. And of course, firing women of color, keeping them from accessing positions of leadership, book bans where we're censoring writers, especially women of color. I experienced this really in particular with Erased, actually, when it came out. So many people that I would have expected to review the book or say something about the book were completely avoiding it and ignoring it. So we're seeing even, Black female journalists who are being fired or arrested. We're also seeing Black female authors who are not getting the coverage that we deserve. And it's a part of that silencing, and it's all back to this. We want to establish who gets to have power in this nation, and we want it to be a return to what the founding fathers envisioned.
Yeah, it's a reminder that patriarchy cannot exist without white supremacy, and white supremacy can't exist without patriarchy. They go hand in hand in a very strict and limited view of who gets to your point, gets to have power, who is recognized as human in this country, versus cattle.
Exactly. And we spent some of the earlier parts of this episode talking about women in sports because of wrapping up Olympic season and things of that nature. And I think that's definitely an industry where you see that same thing playing out. Women in sports, in theory, can sound really, really empowering. But in the name of protecting women in sports, that often means throwing under the bus Black women in sports, trans women in sports, non-binary people in sports.
Yes.
And you know, that example that not everyone gets to be that, and that, you know, there's a hypersexualization and all those other things. But what are your reflections on the role of women in sports right now, and also just erasure of women's contributions? Because like women athletes have been killing it and they're still not paid as much. So what comes up for you when you think of kind of that intersection with some of the things you've studied?
So many thoughts come up. I'm like, where do I begin? There's so much to say about this. Yeah. But I would say, one, it's an example of progress that we've made throughout the years, and really a clear thing that we can point to in terms of how much can shift in a nation, right? We were told for so many years that women were not strong enough to compete in sports, that in fact they would ruin their reproductive abilities if they exerted themselves too much. Like there were books written by supposed doctors saying that this was something that the female body could not handle. And so we can always point to even the persistence of female athletes and them fighting for their right to compete as a moment where we've had some serious wins, and where we can clearly say, look how all of this is flying in the face of the lies of patriarchy in the United States. But it also reminds us that progress in the United States has not been linear, but in fact has always been this tug of war, that if we accomplish something, we can't just say, okay, now we have this right. We actually have to continue to fight to protect it. And so I'm really glad you brought in the discussion of trans athletes, because one of the reasons that trans athletes are being attacked so much is because they make it very clear that this notion of American patriarchy and this notion of this gender binary is all made up, and that we have access to other options, that in fact we all have freedoms that are being kept from us. But they are one of the most vulnerable groups when it comes to American patriarchy, because American patriarchy relies on the existence of the gender binary. And what I like to remind so many people of is when we think of the attacks on trans athletes in particular, many of them rely on the notion that female athletes, cisgender athletes, are not strong enough to compete. So there's all these videos and propaganda that come out where you see a trans athlete spikes a ball at the face of a cisgender athlete, and everyone is appalled. Rather than showing us all the footage of what sports are, people are getting hurt. You know, this is happening all the time between all kinds of athletes. And one of the first steps in removing the right for women to play sports is to first make it clear for the public and make us all agree that women aren't strong enough to compete, that women need to be protected, that women are fragile. So most people don't understand that one step is going to be removing access to trans athletes and their ability to participate in sports. But the next natural step after that is to say, actually, women, remember we protected you because you're really not strong enough to compete. And then we go back in time to when we were told women need protection and they cannot participate in anything that will exert their bodies. And so the erasure of athletes, the erasure, you know, of celebrating all of their accomplishments, even the downgrading, for instance, of the hockey team winning and President Trump making jokes about how he's maybe going to have to include the women as well. All of that goes back to really the notion that women aren't supposed to be competing. So we try to make a joke about it, or we make sure that the story isn't highlighted, because if it's highlighted, it reminds us again that all of this is made up. This hierarchy is made up. It's not divine. It's not the natural order. It's just the reproduction of the insecurity of men. And so whenever there's any story that's going to tell us this is not our only option, we have other things available to us, it's either going to be completely erased, we're not going to give it coverage, or we're going to mock it so we take away the accomplishments and the magnitude of what's been done.
You know, I'm so happy you mentioned the hockey team's response to Donald Trump joke, because it's so interesting that oftentimes men will say, you know, not all men. But it's not enough to say, I support you and I stand in solidarity with you in private if I don't emulate that same behavior externally to the public, right? Because that public behavior is the one that's being replicated by young boys.
Yeah.
That public behavior is giving Donald Trump kind of the empowerment to feel like he can continue to make jokes like that because there are men like that will laugh. How do men, or how would you think men should start to really grapple with that belief of like, if you truly support and care and want to protect women, you have to do that in almost every aspect of your life and not just in the moments when it's convenient?
Absolutely. I mean, and it's so interesting because as you're speaking, it makes me think of all of these studies that we've seen where men might think it's okay to joke like this, or to actually really do believe that women are less than them until, for instance, they have a daughter. And there's this like revolutionary moment for them where they're like, oh, my daughter deserves to be, you know, treated fairly, or we shouldn't be making fun. Like it's until they have this sort of like recognition from that perspective of somebody that they love and are wanting to protect and who they want to honor and celebrate, we often don't see them make this click in their minds, which I find really fascinating in terms of those hockey players. Like, are any of them fathers? Do any of them have daughters? Did they really think that joking alongside with this man who's known for degrading women was something that they wouldn't have consequences for, right? And so that's one thought that comes to mind for me. And then the other side, in terms of your actual question around how do we make sure men understand that in order for them to be real allies and in order for there to be actual systemic change, we need them to do this, whether they know people are watching or not. It's really for them to understand that it also affects them. Patriarchy is hurting them as well. When we continue to replicate these notions that men don't take women seriously, that men themselves are supposed to be unable to show vulnerable emotions, that they don't get to be, you know, protected, or they don't get to be kind, or they don't get to be compassionate individuals. Like, all of that also limits their identities and their ability to show up fully in the world. So I think it's both. It's them understanding the importance of doing this for all women, whether they're related to you or not, but also understand that it's connected to their own ability to be free, and for them to be who they're meant to be as well. And so I think it's just kind of shifting the notion that it's a man versus woman dialogue, and more so we all deserve to be treated fairly, no matter what.
Exactly, because to your point, otherwise men are just going to continue to walk around and complain that they're lonely, right? And there's a reason for why you are lonely. You're not evolving and actually putting yourself in a position where women want to be around you and can trust that you will protect them, both with your words and your actions. In honor of Women's History Month, how can we, the general public, how can men, how can women, how can we continue to kind of resist the erasure at a time where it feels like celebrating, promoting, if I think about Black History Month, right? I saw very little commercial celebration of Black history the way we've seen in previous years. And I think we're going to see similar things for Women's History Month. How can we as the general public kind of resist that erasure in our everyday lives, even as corporations kind of bend the knee to the administration?
Yeah, there's so much to be said about that. I think whenever people are feeling fearful, I think that's one of the reasons some people are not posting as much, or companies are not doing as much as they have done in the past. I always remind people that all of this is made up. Like, this system of American patriarchy, again, is not divine order. It's not the natural order. It is made up entirely. So that removes some of its power. It means we can always make up something different. We can always choose to do differently. Yes, there may be some punishment involved, right? Because a system that is made up needs to do something to protect itself. Yes, there are some consequences that are involved, but we have to be willing to see beyond that and create something new together. And I would just also say that with any of this erasure, we also have access to tools that we didn't previously have. A lot of us can take control into our own hands, even when this erasure is happening, whether that's using social media, whether that's, you know, creating our own platforms online. And when I think about Erased, for example, the reason I bring it up in terms of an example of what's happening in terms of censorship right now, I was a returning New York Times bestselling author with this book. With my very first book, it was my debut. I was a PhD candidate. People didn't know my name yet. And still the New York Times reviewed it Time Magazine put 2 of my op-eds out. You know, like a lot of people are putting it on their list for most anticipated books, et cetera. So when I'm coming back with my second book, it's really unheard of that the New York Times wouldn't review my book. They didn't even review it. Time Magazine wouldn't comment on any of it. And so I started to see, okay, this political climate is really impacting people's courage. It's keeping people from celebrating works that they would have celebrated. But I also know, and I have always loved and appreciated Black press, right? Our power is still and always will be the most important power to leverage in the United States. Those of us who are aware of how made up this system is, and we take power into our own hands, and they are the reason. It was Reese Colbert, Clay Kane, Van and Rachel on Higher Learning, who gave my book enough attention that it still was able to become an instant New York Times bestseller. And that is regardless of mainstream media paying attention to me or not. And so that's one of the things we all can kind of take that and hopefully feel inspired by the fact that we can still take things into our own hands. And in fact, we have to, especially in a time like this.
Yes to that. You know, our motto at this point here is do not comply in advance. But I think that taking it a step further and hearing what you just said about just we have to create the conditions that we want to exist within. And it takes courage, and we have to be courageous enough to do it. Thank you so much for joining us. Please tell our listeners where they can buy your 2 incredible New York Times bestselling books, and also
listen to your podcast and your new books.
Exactly.
All the things.
Thank you. Okay, you can find all my stuff on my website. It's just my name.com. So AnnaMalaikaTubbs.com. It's also my handle on Instagram. I know things feed out to Facebook, but I never check Facebook, so don't be mad at me if I don't reply on there. But I am active on Instagram, and I just launched a podcast that kind of takes some of the things from Erased and just gives you 5-minute chunks to think about twice a week. And it's just me. There's no guests. It's just kind of like you go on this journey as we think about us building a new democracy together. And yes, I'm working on a lot of projects, so just stay tuned. And you can buy my book wherever books are sold, but I always say support independent bookstores, especially Black-owned bookstores. And there was a map that just came out that documents where all the Black bookstores are across the nation. So we now all have a resource and no excuse to not go and find your local Black-owned bookstore.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Bye.
Okay, everyone, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. You're watching The Other Side of Change only on the Black Star Network.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. As you all just witnessed, we just had an amazing interview with Dr. Anna Malaika Tubbs. And as always, the transition from February to March is difficult, right? Because we get to celebrate both Blackness and womanhood back to back. And I'm happy that we were able to bring Dr. Tubbs on with us. In recent years, though, it has been harder and harder to feel like anything is worth celebrating. But this conversation, I think, gave me hope, and hopefully it gives you hope and some actionable steps that you can do to continue the work.
Yeah. As the brilliant June Jordan reminds us, we are not powerless and we need to act accordingly. I think that that is definitely something that I'm taking away from our conversation with Anna and just what she mentioned about courage. So really holding that. And I hope that y'all are to take action often and intentionally. And this episode is hopefully going to help you do that a lot easier.
Yeah, and if you want to dive a little bit deeper, check out these books. Dr. Anna Malaika Tubbs, 2 books called The Three Mothers and Erased, as well as Women, Race, and Class by Angela Davis, Hood Feminism by Miki Kendall, as well as Black Women Taught Me by Jen M. Jackson. All amazing books. Please pick them up wherever books are sold. But as Anna mentioned, go to independent bookstores.
Black owned, women owned, all that. And follow organizations like Girls Inc., Me Too Foundation, Sister Song, the Marsha P. Johnson Institute, YWCA USA, and just anyone working around women's autonomy and advancement. We have to show up for those organizations because they are the ones showing up for us.
Exactly. And you've been watching The Other Side of Change only on the Black Star Network. Until next time, keep pushing and do not comply in advance.